Hey everyone, how you doing? So, PvZ Fusion. Man, I don't even know where to start talking about this fan game. Like, look at this gameplay. This is real, by the way. Yeah, those clickbait videos you've seen for years got turned into a game, and it's even more insane than you could ever imagine. And with this video in particular, I want to introduce you guys to this insanity and complexity by discussing my personal favorite fusion in the game, that being Cherrizilla. Even explaining what this is should be a very interesting topic, because I think this plant is the epitome of too good in a game with questionable balancing. I would dare call it the best strong Odyssey fusion in the game, but I'm getting ahead of myself. You saw that intro, and you know that we have quite a bit of ground to cover in a short time frame. So without any further ado, let's start with the basics here. How does PvZ Fusion work? I plan on making a much longer video on this game in the future, but just for the sake of this one, you should at least understand what it tries to accomplish. So imagine PvZ1, but you can fuse the plants on your lawn to make new faces. As an example, a sunflower and pea shooter fused together looks like this, and it can provide some basic support while giving you sun. Sweet, right? But that's just the beginning. Some fusions, like Sun Shooter, are simple. Then you have Tyrannoflora Lux. Oh. How did we get here? Well, I definitely don't have the time to explain any of that in this video, but we do have time to discuss how we get to our favorite red boy, Cherrizilla. And by the end of this video, you should be able to understand why it's as good as it is. So, this plant, like most other plants in the game, is a fusion. In particular, it's a fusion of Cherry Chomper and Chompzilla. But what exactly are those plants? Well, starting with the simpler of the two, Cherry Chomper is a Chomper and Cherry Bomb hybrid that causes a 3x3 explosion when it bites zombies. That's it. And again, it might be simple, but it's pretty effective. Then we have Chompzilla, which is the real star of the show here. This plant is a fusion between Pea Shooter, Chomper, and Walnut. Each of these plants can fuse with the other two under normal circumstances, all bringing out unique results, but the fusion between all three is a culmination of every positive the other fusions have. Chompzilla, at his simplest, is a wall plant that eats zombies and shoots their parts at the horde. But to be a little more specific, this plant has the same HP as Walnut, and it deals 200 damage per chomp, with the zombie bits it shoots dealing 80 damage to the lane they roll down, with infinite pierce and occasional knockback as a nice bonus. Now, the reason why I specified its chomp damage is because this plant can attack between the devour intervals a normal chomper goes through. It insta-kills any zombies with less than 500 toughness, but it has to whittle down the HP of the horde otherwise. And that might seem like a weird quirk, one that might not work well, but it does. Because this plant is one of the few in this game that has self-sustainability. Let me explain. Most plants in PvZ Fusion have no means of being able to heal themselves. Certain fusions have unique traits that let them regenerate over time, or with specific materials on the field, but otherwise, healing your defense basically requires a select set of fusions or fertilizer. And when it comes to the group of plants that can heal themselves, most of them aren't too terribly sustainable. Like, they can survive, but not for very long if they're being devoured frequently. Well, that's where Chompzilla's main gimmick comes into play. It just doesn't die. That's the gimmick. Okay, I should probably get a little more specific here, but I'm not exactly lying. See, these two lines of text for its almanac entry basically tell the story themselves. The damage cap is one thing, since this plant can't die in one hit besides getting hit by Zomboss's RV. But it's a whole other discussion when the plant can literally get 4 times its HP from a single devouring. Now, bear in mind that this is a once every 40 seconds kind of thing, and otherwise it'll be getting most of its healing from basic kills, which are both healing methods that have a life drain of 200 per second, at least if they're in the overhealth region. But with that being said, at least for the base game, you won't be dealing with too many zombies that can actually beat this. I haven't mentioned the kind of threats you face in the fan game, but even among the insane crowd we have to work with, there's a good chunk of zombies that still die as soon as they enter Chompzilla's devouring range. Never mind the hardest difficulty in the game, which it can sustain itself at, and is the difficulty all of this video's footage is recorded in. If you look at the average difficulty that the game has you on by default, this plant never has to worry about without getting completely overrun in most game modes. It's kind of insane just how sustainable it really is, but it does have some major flaws, and we'll discuss these too. The big one that might not seem obvious is the lack of air defensiveness. Yes, PvZ Fusion has aerial zombies, and they're deadly as heck. There's not that many of them, but all of them can take Chompzilla out if he isn't able to heal himself. On top of this, Chompzilla is also not anti-crush, which is a status in this game similar to a permanent spike rock. This affects a lot of zombies, more than you might think, and that makes Chompzilla's wall capabilities seem a little limited. It also isn't a tall net, despite how it looks, and that means zombies can get past it in the right circumstances. And don't even get me started on the explosive zombies. Yikes. But besides those things, and the general lack of viability of this plant in the endgame modes, Chompzilla is a very solid fusion. And again, bear in mind, this can be made into something better. So how about we make it better? Now you just drag your cherry chomper onto a Chompzilla and voila! Hello, Cherryzilla. Okay, let me just immediately clear the air. This plant is only usable in a few select modes, just to make it more fair. But even in these modes, it kinda trumps a lot of the competition. And why is that? Well, take everything from Chompzilla, make the stats better, add some new stats on top of that, and add invincibility. Okay, that's a lot, so let's break it down. This plant has 8000 HP with the properties of a tall net and the cherry plant, as well as being anti-crush. Being a tall net means most zombies can't sleep over it and all that. The cherry properties here really just boil down to the plant being healed by explosive cherries, which come from these guys. Oh god. And we already discussed the anti-crush, but you'd be happy to hear that most vehicle zombies get completely stalled by this plant, just for existing. That's so stupid, and we haven't even gotten to the good stuff yet. This plant deals 1000 damage per chomp, with these bites dealing AoE damage on top of some bonus damage that equates to a zombie target's max HP using an equation that's too much to get into for this video, but basically, big numbers. That's all that matters. It also spits out explosive cherries when it bites, so yeah, it's strong. It heals for the same HP it chomps at, so it's immediately very sustainable, and we haven't even gotten to the main reason it's so good. Okay, so the devouring gimmick on Chompzilla was already solid, but this plant just flat out devours any zombie that's not a mini-boss or better. So that's like most zombies in the game it can eat. And it gets the same buffs as Chompzilla, so it gets 32,000 HP and a devour stack, which in simple terms, buffs its damage in the equation I chose not to discuss. Sounds great. And yeah, then there's the invincibility. Good god. Reading the almanac entry, quote, on taking lethal damage, HP remains at 1 for 5 seconds, once every 10 seconds. What does this mean exactly? Basically, Cherrizilla will not die if a zombie deals enough damage to kill it, for 5 seconds. It'll sit at 1 HP for a little while, and when the invincibility is over, it takes 10 seconds to get that opportunity again. But it doesn't need that opportunity for a while. And that's because, no matter what HP this plant is at, if it devours a zombie at any point after the invulnerability, it gets all 32,000 HP back. And even if it's on a devour cooldown, it can just bite a zombie to get some basic HP back. Dude, this plant is crazy. Now, I did a good amount of testing, and I found exactly one zombie that kills it, that's not Zomboss, which genuinely surprised me until I understood why. See, this Gargantuar is a mini-boss, and only to cover what I have to, he basically provides a net 80 to 90% damage reduction for all zombies on the screen for as long as he lives. Every time he smashes the ground, he also spawns these little bastards called abyssal, which can very quickly stack up on a plant and absolutely destroy their HP. This just so happens to affect Cherrizilla, and even in this situation, it's not the Garg that can kill it, it's just the minions that spawn after the fact. Besides these guys, and I'm sure in a defense where Cherrizilla is your only attacker, this plant just doesn't die in normal gameplay, because anyone smart enough to use it is gonna keep it alive. A good example is pairing it up with a really strong plant that counters aerial threats. See, Cherrizilla can still die to like these things. I don't even know what I'm looking at. But even then, that's in a controlled environment where you don't have any way to defend them and no zombies to feed them. And it's 3 lanes from the front, because front loading with this plant is not only viable, but also heavily encouraged. Of course Cherrizilla's gonna die here. But if we're talking normal gameplay, even on the highest difficulty, almost nothing gets past this guy, especially if you're smart. And in this entire discussion, I haven't even mentioned the modifiers this plant can have. In the Odyssey mode, which is basically Fusion's main survival mode, you can not only buy fusions, like Cherryzilla, but you can also buy buffs for said plants. And Cherryzilla in particular gets two devious ones. The first is increasing his healing amount by 3 times, which means he's made even more self-sustainable. And the second reduces his devour cooldown to 15 seconds. 15 seconds! I don't even know how I can explain how good that is. It basically means he literally can't die anymore, since his cooldown is basically just short enough to make even the most spammable zombies no threat, as long as he heals fast enough. It's just not fair. And neither is the synergy with Obsidian Tallnut. Dude, why? It's only after you unlock both plants and their modifiers in the Odyssey modes, but Cherryzilla has his HP cap removed, and Obsidian Tallnut gains a 90% damage reduction. We're not even going to talk about him today, but just keep in mind that he's basically unkillable in his own way too. Man, Cherryzilla is nuts. One last thing to note about this fusion is that it actually has a side grade, aptly titled the Garzilla. This is basically Cherryzilla if it lost the cherry properties and instead works like a garlic. Now, interestingly enough, this game gives Garlic and his fusions a poison gimmick that makes their stink kill zombies over time, and Garzilla applies that to some of his projectiles. But besides that, that's kind of it. This guy is notably not as good as a wall plant, since any zombie that eats it just switches lanes. So it's definitely nicher than Cherryzilla, but not necessarily worse. Just more situational is all. But yeah, that's basically Cherryzilla and everything about him explained. Until we get into even more plant synergy like cherry pots and no, we're done here. This was a longer video than I thought it would be. The video was only supposed to be like 6 minutes long, and I haven't even started the fusion video I was actually gonna make. Shoot. Well, if you guys like this explanation, feel free to tell me in the comments down below. I'm also going to leave links to the ways you can get this game in the description. So if you've been asking about that this whole time, you'll find the sources there, don't worry. And as a final little note, thank you to all of my channel members for making these videos possible. As of the time this video is coming out, I'll probably be 21. Cool. Happy birthday to me, and I'm still talking about PvZ at my big age. Yay. Anyways, peace. Oh, got him! I got him! Oh my god!